Hello pickles! So today I'm going to be going through 10 romance read recommendations. Number 1, When Dimple Met Rishi by Sandhya Menon. Dimple wants to become a web developer, but her parents have one goal for her: to get married. When her parents finally agree to let her attend a summer camp for aspiring web developers, she finds herself elated, only to find out later on that her parents have secretly sent her here to set her up. Rishi is a romantic and another traditional Indian boy like Dimple's parents. He thinks that Dimple knows about him and knows about this setup. However, when he arrives to introduce himself and Dimple has no idea who he is and therefore throws a drink in his face, he realises something's going on. The two agree to become friends and spend a lot of the summer camp together. However, friendship turns into something more. This story is really sweet and it's a real feel-good romance. My second pick is very popular on BookTube. It is The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. When Olive's identical twin sister Amy gets married and the whole wedding party, other than her and her enemy Ethan, the best man, get food poisoning, they realise that a honeymoon in Hawaii, all expenses paid, is up for grabs. They decide to put aside their mutual hatred for the sake of this holiday. However, when they arrive and Olive's new boss is there, they have to pretend to be newlyweds. This is a really funny enemies to lovers romance with great banter between the characters and a really funny premise. Another beloved book is Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuinson. The son of the US President Alex Clement Diaz and the Prince of Wales, Henry, are enemies. However, when a confrontation at a wedding goes viral, they are forced to get on and the two become extremely close. They both realise they're harbouring their own secrets and romance ensues from there. This is a beautiful queer romance that's a lot of fun and very touching, and I just found myself feeling really happy reading this. My next pick is Matchmaking for Beginners by Maddie Dawson. Marnie wants an ordinary life, but when she meets Blix, her fiance's matchmaking great aunt, things change. Blix tells Marnie that her and her fiance are not meant for each other, and when their marriage ends after 2 miserable weeks, Marnie is understandably shocked, especially when she finds out she has inherited Blix's brownstone in Brooklyn. Blix told her before she died that Marnie was a matchmaker too, and there is this touch of magic throughout. Marnie finds herself mixing together lots of oddball, unfinished projects that Blix has left for her, and along the way may find love for herself too. This is a really sweet and touching romance that's really easy to fly through and feels magical throughout. One of my favourite books ever is Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. Frances is a 21-year-old student and writer who performs her slam poetry alongside her friend Bobby, who also happens to be her ex-girlfriend. One night, they meet journalist Melissa, who believes in their talent, and become friends with her and her husband Nick. This becomes a very complicated relationship between all 4 of these people. It's very messy, and I'm not sure if it technically counts as a romance. It focuses on relationships and romance, but it's not entirely a love story in the traditional sense. However, I found it super engrossing, and I know a lot of people love normal people and that this book doesn't necessarily get as much hype, but I personally prefer it. I think that it's a really beautiful story and it has so much about growing up and trying to work out what you want in a relationship and who you want to be with. My next suggestion is a fantasy romance, An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson. This is a world in which the fair folk and humans interact, but the fair folk kind of look down on humans, and Isabel is a painter and incredibly talented. When she gets her first royal patron, Rook, she finds herself in a lot of trouble as she paints sadness into his face, and this is entirely against fair folk etiquette. They're not meant to show any emotion. So Rook comes to her house and takes her to the fair folk world. The whole story is extremely magical, and Margaret Rogerson has this wonderful way of spinning both a fantastical world alongside beautiful and encapsulating romance that makes you really root for both of the characters. There's a lot of growth within this story. There's a lot of understanding each other and understanding oneself, and there's also this element of trying to understand emotions from a group of people that apparently aren't meant to show them. Moving into the historical romance section, I have 4 more books for you. The first is Bringing Down the Duke by Evie Dunmore. Annabelle Archer is extremely intelligent and finds herself being one of the first females in a cohort allowed into a prestigious Oxford college. As she comes from no money, she needs to accept a scholarship. The caveat of this scholarship is that it comes from the women's suffragette movement. To ensure she keeps the scholarship, she has to continually help the movement, the aim being to recruit men of influence to the cause. Her target is Sebastian Devereux, or the Duke of Montgomery. He is an aristocrat that has a lot of influence in Britain's political systems. This is a romance between two very strong-willed people who think that they want opposite things. Sebastian wants to find himself a wife who believes in traditional values. Annabelle is an outspoken commoner. However, locked in a battle of two passionate people, romance is bound to start. This was such a fun novel. I found myself laughing and rooting for them whilst also wanting them to fight each other. It's really entertaining, super high drama, really, really ridiculous, but in a good way. It wouldn't be a romance recommendation from me without a suggestion from Tessa there. This time it's the Duchess deal. Emma Gladstone is a seamstress, but when one of the brides she makes a dress for doesn't pay because she's no longer marrying her husband, she decides to march over to the husband's house in the wedding dress and try to persuade him to give her the money. The Duke of Ashbury has an entirely different plan. He just wants to find a wife and is looking for someone to produce his heirs. So instead of paying for the dress, he suggests that they should get married. This starts a whole series of events, a marriage of convenience turning to saucy romance, turning to actual romance. It's a lot of fun, and like all of Tessa Dare's books, is really well written, and the characters are both people you really want to get sort of their redemption arcs, you want them to get happy ever afters, and it was such a fun read for me. My next recommendation is A Company of Swans by Evie Ibbotson. This story follows Harriet, a ballerina from Oxford. When a Russian ballet master comes to watch their rehearsals and talent picks her and invites her to join his ballet company, her whole world changes. Defying her father's wishes and trying to run away from a man she does not want to marry, she finds herself joining the ballet company and going on an incredible adventure down the Amazon. Whilst there, she meets Rom, a mysterious British exile. The whole atmosphere of this book is beautiful. The descriptions of the Amazon, the whole setting, the ballet, everything is so lush and beautifully written. Everything is so full of wonderful imagery, as well as this stunning romance that's so heartwarming, and you really just root for Harriet. She's really had a rough time in life and you just want the best for her. And the romance has the sort of moody, brooding older man thing that I know a lot of people like in their romances. It's a really beautiful story and one that I never see people talking about. The last book on my list is Dangerous Alliance by Jennica Cohen. This book is also subtitled an ostentatious romance, which sets it up perfectly. The main character, Vicky, is obsessed with Austen's novels, and when her sister runs away from her abusive husband, she realises that she needs to find a husband to make sure that their estate is looked after. And so she goes to London with the aim of finding a husband, but using all of Austen's novels to sort of guide her etiquette and what she should be looking for. As you can imagine from the title, she forms an alliance with a man there, and it all becomes very funny and very romantic. This is a very dramatic story. It's a little bit over the top, but in the really fun way that makes the story really, really gripping. I enjoyed the way that Austen was sort of like interweaved, so if you are a fan of Austen's works, that makes this story extra special. I also felt that this story had like a very nice modern feel to it. It was really well paced and the romance was very sweet and soft, and I really enjoyed that. So those are my 10 romance recommendations. Please comment below if you've read any of these before or if there's any you're going to try out. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe and all that jazz. See you soon. Latest pickles.